pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If we might start this evening with a special meeting, and that is to appoint a replacement for G. Brian Vaccaris on the Board of Finance. And do we have a motion to nominate someone?
On behalf of the Waterford Republican Town Committee, I would like to nominate Mr. Mark Wiggins as successor for the remainder of the term of Mr. Brian Vaccaris. That's him back there.
Do we have a second? And do we have any other nominations? If not, let's have the nominations closed. All in favor of Mark Wiggins to replace the term Brian Vaccaris for the term on the Board of Finance, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No, thank you. Mark, want to get out of the cheaper seats?
Obviously, he hasn't been sworn in yet, so.
Oh, he hasn't been. Oh.
Yeah, he hasn't sworn in, but he can sit.
I can just sit.
Yeah, he hasn't been sworn in.
Well, he can sit
You can come up, yeah. We won't have a vote.
Yeah, just be like Cheryl. Just sit there and be quiet. Okay. Cheryl, you got to know we're so happy to have you back.
Yay!
Yes, ma'am. Bill, you should just
Be lightly and be quiet. Did you hear that? The part about not having a question.
I don't have to do it. Yeah, actually, Jack can do it too.
Boy, we have a lot of justices here.
Do you know the oath of office?
No, we have.
You don't?
Yeah, I know it's the Constitution of the United States and the state of Connecticut, as long as you're a resident thereof, but that's as far as I can go.
Yeah.
All right, you lose.
It's not written down, Bill. I'm not doing it.
Yeah, me too.
Mark, you either lose or you win. I'm not exactly sure which how that works, but we can't swear you in because nobody knows the oath yet.
It's 50-50.
50-50. Well, if we can have a motion to adjourn the special meeting,
So,
and that's a motion and a second, whichever way you want to look at it. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. So now we'd like to start off with our regular board meeting, and we'd like to start off with item 1, which is public comment. Is there anyone in the audience this evening that has a public comment on the agenda? Something not on the agenda? Something on your mind? Going once? Going twice. Thank you. Item number 2 is approval and acceptance of minutes of the regular meeting of November the 9th.
move approval of the minutes is presented.
Motion and a second to approve the minutes. Any questions, comments on the agenda? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? 2 abstentions? 2 abstentions.
Cheryl.
And Cheryl. You have to do it one.
Anthony.
Yes. Item number 3, selection and appointment of Chairman of the Board of Finance. Can we have someone nominate someone for the Chairman of the Board of Finance?
Make a motion that we nominate Mr. Ron Fedor.
Oh,
Lucky son.
motion and a second. Are there any other nominations? If not, can we close the nominations? And all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item number 4, selection and appointment of clerk of the Board of Finance. Can I have a motion to appoint someone to the clerk of the Board of Finance?
I'll nominate Alan Walensky as clerk of the Board of Finance.
Motion is second. Anybody else interested? Move to close. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item number 5, selection of Board of Finance license to the Town of Waterford boards and commissions. If I could ask, and I don't know if everybody knows what they do or not, we have the list here. I was sort of hoping that what we could do is if everybody would stay with what they have, if that's fine with them, for the sake of consistency, and then we have 3 open commissions: police, fire, and senior citizens. And
There's no fire.
I'm sorry, there is no fire.
Retirement.
I
That's a separate action.
Oh, it's a separate bill?
Separate
Sorry.
agenda.
Yeah, there is no fire.
Would you make a note that Rudy stands corrected on that?
Excuse me, I don't do these things.
I'm sorry. So we have only two positions, two commissions are open. We do have other areas that are open, the technology committee, for instance.
For the record,
Yes,
do
sir.
we need to just go over who's
Sure.
just so I can keep it.
Okay. Alan, you have Board of Education. Bill is with the Board of Selectmen and the Utility Commission. You hit a home run on those. Norm is with Park and Rec.
Ron,
Yes, sir.
could you remind everybody to use the mic? It's not picking up sometimes.
You reminded me, huh?
No,
Very
the other
safe.
members.
Very polite of you. Thank you very much. Maybe it's not right. So the first position we have open is the Police Commission. And I don't know if anybody else is interested. I know Anthony expressed an interest in the Police Commission. That's good? Go with it? And Senior Citizens Commission?
Yeah.
Cheryl?
Excuse me.
Cheryl's going to do some,
Anthony's going to do this. Gotcha.
and Cheryl's going to do Senior Citizens.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We need no motions on those. Item number 6 is appointment of Board of Finance member on the Information Technology Committee to replace Brian. Bill, you did it before. We gave it to Brian.
The key is I have another meeting that meets the same Wednesday at 2:30 in the afternoon, and the IT committee meets at 3 o'clock, and I can't be in Norwich and Waterford at the same time.
We need it at 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Is there?
Yes.
Yeah, it meets at 3 o'clock.
Mark, Mark, would you be available for a meeting at 3 o'clock on Wednesdays for a technology committee?
Every Wednesday?
No,
No.
No.
once a month, or sometimes I skip a month.
Yeah, it's usually during the budget periods, January, we do not meet, February we meet, March we don't meet, April we meet, May we don't meet, June, July, August, September, October, November, December, we meet once a month,
On Wednesday at 3.
3 p.m.
It should, I mean, I can't guarantee 100% of the time, but it should not be an issue.
Thank you.
It's fairly, very flexible work.
Thank you very much. Can I have a motion to that effect?
Mark Wiggins is the IT rep.
Yes. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item number 7, appointment of the Board of Finance member to serve on the ad hoc committee to screen social service budget requests. You want to do that, Bill? I know he loves that a lot. Can I have a motion to that effect, please?
So move.
And I'll second that. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? No, Billy can't. Now, item number 8, appointment by the Board of Finance member to serve on the ad hoc building. Do we have a Jordan Fire Company building committee?
No,
still?
we
We
don't.
Great. That was 8.
No, it's complete.
Oh, I'm sorry. You know what I was doing? I'm going by my old schedule, not by my new one. No wonder that didn't look right. Appointment of the Board of Finance representative to the Fleet Management Ad Hoc Committee for a 1-year term. And George previously held that position. I attend anyway. Is there anybody else who is interested in fleet management?
I can attend because we do normally do it every day, and I'm free.
Is there anybody else that has an interest in fleet management? In that case, would somebody like to nominate Bill for that position?
So move.
How about a second? We already have a motion and a second. Cheryl and Norm flip the coin. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item number 9, appointment of 2 members of the Board of Finance to the Long Range Fiscal Planning Committee for a 2-year term. Once again, is there anyone who has an interest in this position specifically? Cheryl?
How frequently do you meet?
Pardon?
Frequently. It all It's a depends. daytime meeting, right? Not necessarily. I mean, it wouldn't be a huge thing.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Yeah, not necessarily. It all depends on who chairs. And normally it's someone, if George was the chair.
Yeah.
Okay, so normally the Board of Finance member chairs, and it's whenever they call the meetings, sure, because they're all special meetings.
I'll nominate Cheryl Art for one position. I'll nominate Ron Peter for the second position.
Well, Norm wanted to, Norm raised this.
Norm wants to do it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
It's fine.
you don't care? Cheryl, do you care?
It's fine. No, we can have.
Okay. So Norm and I then.
Okay.
Is that all right?
No.
Everybody? Nope.
Norm and Ron.
And Ron. Do you have a motion to that effect, please?
We have a motion, Bill.
We do have a motion from Bill?
I'll
Amendment.
change it in a minute.
In that case, can I have a second to that, please?
Second.
Thank you, Alan. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Appointment of Board of Finance member to serve on the Retirement Commission. Strenuous duty, 2 years.
I'll do it.
You'll do it, Bill?
Oh, thank you, Bill.
I'll nominate Bill.
I'll second that. Let's vote on it quickly. All in favor signify by saying aye. And now we move on to real business. Item number 11. Request from Chief Pendleton on behalf of the Board of Police Commissioners for a transfer of $9,000 from line item 10229-52040 service contract repairs to line item 10229-53180 police equipment and supplies to purchase new weapons. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
And can I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Motion and a second. I don't know if everybody's read the backup material. I think it's fairly self-explanatory. It talks about the fact that to repair the weapons that they currently have in stock will cost $19,000. To purchase new weapons with the exchange of the old weapons will only cost us $9,000. Chief, would you like to tell us, is there anything else about the new weapons, the design or anything like that, that is an improvement over the previous weapons? Or anything else we should know about them?
I think probably the biggest improvement in characteristic is that we've always had difficulty with people with small hands, in some cases qualifying as rapidly as they should. And with this new technology, there's a design in the grip that allows you to invert it so that it can be safely handled by a person with a smaller hand, which is a major change in the weapon from a law enforcement perspective.
Good news, Steve.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Salk, too. Are there any questions on? Are there any questions on this? No.
Yeah. I notice that the Glock is your choice on this.
Yes, sir.
Have you looked into any other manufacturers?
Well, I'll tell you, one of the main reasons we're sticking with the Glock is because, for the most part, we have to go back to when we first received these weapons. We received such a deal from Glock that we nearly didn't spend any money at all for them. It was almost an even exchange. The weapon basically has the characteristics that we needed a weapon. I can certainly remember when you were on the job, there were always people that had difficulties reaching the minimum qualifying score. And when we went to the Glock, everyone was able to qualify, and that's a great characteristic in a weapon. I think a lot of the other weapons that are of the same nomenclature for the most part are probably going to be much more expensive, and we don't have the history with the companies that will allow us this good deal. I mean, they're really charging us about $200 a gun for these. That's like unbelievable. We'd never be able to do this, I don't think, with anybody else. And this whole deal was orchestrated by the purchasing agent for the town. This is not a police deal, so to speak.
Okay, but you didn't check like the Beretta or a Colt or any other deal?
No, we did not. We didn't experiment with weapons. They've traditionally been very expensive, and we're satisfied with what we have and the deal we have.
Okay. And the state police still use the Beretta?
Easy to see.
Now, the maintenance and upkeep on these weapons, They're inspected on a yearly basis?
They're inspected frequently. We have special cleaning sessions where the weapons are broken down and cleaned and inspected. And then, of course, when they go through the range, that's a much greater inspection conducted by we have our master range master here, Bob Stroll, and then a training sergeant, Steve Bellows.
Okay, and the ammunition, is that cycled through properly?
We're using basically two types of ammunition. One type is the type that's carried in a weapon, and the second type is environmentally safe. It's a special type of ammunition that we're only allowed to use on the range. That's a result of an issue way back when there was lots of ammunition accumulating. But nevertheless, I think the environmentally, and I'd have to check with Steve or Bob, but I think the environmental ammunition has the capability to leave a great deal more residue and powder and chemicals. Is that correct?
I guess the point I'm making is that you need the ammo as well as the weapon.
Certainly.
And it's no good to have ammo in a weapon that's been there for a couple of years. I want to make sure that that's included in being recycled.
Yeah.
And you need 57 of these?
Yeah, we need 57 for a couple of reasons. One is that at one time, you know that if you're involved in anything involving a weapon, and especially involved in state level, that they're going to seize the weapon. They're going to take the weapon, the belt, everything. And it's not like you get that stuff back within 4 months, 6 months, 8 months. I mean, we just lost 2 weapons for over a year. Yeah, long time.
Okay.
So we've got backup stuff, and then of course, if we really have an issue, which we've had with a couple of weapons, you got to ship them out to the factory. So you got to replace what the officer has. So we feel comfortable with the 10 backup.
10 backups. Okay, that was my next question. Thank you.
Any further questions? Alan?
Yeah, certainly don't have a problem with the relative fiscal aspect of this. My question goes into background as far as the past couple of budgets. For the last 2 years, you've budgeted 4 weapons. Has that been above and beyond the Glocks, or has that been an ongoing Glock replacement schedule?
I think it's been above and beyond. I'd have to check with the 2 gentlemen behind me, but we've been in a process of bringing our supply of tasers up where it should be over the course of several years. So every year we're buying a few of those, and with the batteries and everything that goes with it, it's quite an expensive deal. So expensive we just can't do it all at once.
I've noticed in my past 2 budgets that said the delineation of the actual weapons purchase was missing. And the only other question I guess I have is that today's backup was showing the relative costs of maintenance of the guns and how expensive it is compared to purchasing a new one, but I don't see a line item in your budgets in regard to ongoing maintenance of the guns.
I think those supplies come out of general police equipment and supplies. Even if we bought a spring or some other particular part of the weapon, that's where it would be paid for. I don't think we need a separate service contract for that.
So it's not a service contract. It comes in other supplies or?
Correct.
Other supplies?
I believe so. I can verify that for you.
Chief, comes out of weapons.
Are you taking it out of the
Comes
weapons
out of
account?
weapons. That the line item is a line item that's part of it that's considered weapons, and that's where we get some of the replacement parts.
Where you're showing the purchase of 3 weapons the last 2 years, that includes ongoing maintenance?
Yeah.
That's not ever been stated in any of the budgets. That's usually been referred to as actual purchase of hardware.
That's part of the weapon.
That's where my confusion comes in as far as the back. Again, I'm just trying to get, last year was $3,250 for a line item for weapons.
That's the category of where we use that from.
So that also includes ongoing maintenance. Has anything to do with weapons?
It includes maintenance, tasers, taser cartridges, the maintenance on tasers. Taser now, to replace it, to fix a taser is almost $800. To buy a new one is $900. So tasers pretty much got you there. So we were trying to outfit all of our patrol officers with a assigned taser. So that's what the goal was over the last couple of years.
And we're still not there yet.
Where?
Everyone has a taser.
Oh. I think it's the last question. These guns are 14 years old?
Yes. Yes, they are.
What's the average lifespan replacement schedule then? I mean, if it's in weapons budget eventually, I mean, how often have they been rotating? And
I'd say the last time we bought weapons was back in 1996, 97. And I would say roughly, knowing that the officers go to the range on their own, they go to the range when it's qualification time. The range officers put them through different courses. We're talking 14 years. I'll bet you it's close to 20,000 rounds going through those weapons, or the majority of those weapons, over the past 14 years. Now, you had those weapons and you hardly ever used them. I guess they'd be like brand new, but we can't afford to hardly ever use them.
That was certainly not any other point. So we're replacing the entire gun,
Yes.
the entire handgun inventory.
We looked at that first, Alan, to repair them, to send them back to total. It was almost double the cost.
Right. Yeah.
So,
I see that. I'm just trying to get a handle
we didn't do it.
on where we are. We're going to replace every sidearm for the officers, and theoretically these will last approximately the same amount of time, given Glocks. They haven't diminished the quality of the weapon, so we won't be looking to spend a significant amount of money on handguns for another 10 to 15 years. Thank you.
Go ahead, Norman.
Are these the original issue, or has there been replenishment, replacement?
No, actually, the original issue Glock was a 9mm. That was back in the 90s. And it wasn't until 97 when the information came out from the FBI and others that the better weapon for law enforcement was the .40 caliber. And that's when we changed, and that's when we had such a great deal where it cost us nearly nothing to make that change. They just took the weapons and made an even exchange, because they were becoming the weapon of law enforcement for many agencies in the country. And we fell right into that same category. Inexpensive, easy to qualify.
Just one quick technical question, because what is the relative difference between 9mm and .40 caliber?
Well, technically, it's the size of the bore of the barrel.
Yeah, I know. I mean, exactly. How big is it? I don't know the difference.
It could also have an impact on the impact of the projectile on the body based on the size of the missile.
I'm sorry, that's not. What's the difference in size? I don't know what a caliber.
9mm is 110 grain bullet,
Right.
and a .40 caliber is 165 grain. So the impact ratio is quite.
So the .40 caliber is bigger than that.
That's correct.
Right.
But I understand the relative force. I was just curious about those.
I actually just wanted to leverage one question. Is it our experience, obviously it's been the last two times, that rather than budget, because, I mean, these things are, whatever they are, 14 years old or whatever they are, and we didn't put them in a budget. So was the expectation that every time we do this, we pretty much get a great deal on it? Because otherwise, at some point, I would have expected you to anticipate this with a budget that would have brought $20,000 or $30,000 into it, anticipating either exchanging all of them or some kind of a rotationary basis to start factoring them in and out.
Well, listen, our first thought when we discovered we were having issues on the range, from misfires to other issues involving when the cartridge would eject, was to try and repair these. And we did repair several of them. But all of a sudden, the issues within the last year, 18 months, have become way too frequent on the range. And my discussion with Kerman in regards to lots of things was, That's one thing there's no room to have any question as to whether or not they're working properly. So we had to make a decision. Our first decision with the Board of Police Commission, of which the first selectman is one, we actually had a way to get this money donated, but the more we thought about it, it just wasn't the right thing to take the donation. So the alternative was the HVAC system money. And let me just make a comment about that, is that you'll see in our budget this year we're budgeting for $9,000. Well, our intent now is, because we had no way of knowing this was going to happen, our intent now is that we'll get together with Tucker, the vendor, and say, okay, when this warranty runs out in August, what is going to be the maintenance for the system between August and the following June, and we'll adjust that $9,000 to reflect whatever that figure is.
For the HVAC you're referring to now?
I'm sorry?
Are you referring to the HVAC?
For the police department, yes.
Sure.
Joe, you can look quiet. Hi, Chief.
How are you?
Good, thank you. Bear with me while I get a little bit up to speed on some of these things.
Sure.
So can you tell, you're going to have 48, is that what you're purchasing, for use with 10 backups?
Actually, we have 47, I believe.
Okay, 47 with 10
Yeah.
backups, approximately, okay.
Right.
When you say use on the range and use with the officer, do they use their regular weapon when they go to the range? So it's the same weapon?
Yes.
I'm watching him nod from behind you.
Yeah.
We are assigned a weapon the day you start the job. And unless something happens where you get in a shooting or you have an incident and they take it from you, that is your weapon for your career. I've had mine for 14 years, so it's pretty much how it works.
Well, because the question would be, do you use different on the range that are the older so that you cycle fewer? But if that's your weapon and you're using it, that's fine. I guess something that I thought was missing from the backup that I might have appreciated was you referenced saying we've had some issues. I want you to document what the issues are, how frequent they are happening, what's happening. We didn't get any of that. So I was curious as to the period of time that you spent checking on malfunctions or whatever was happening with the weapons and what those might have been. It would have been nice to have had that. And I guess that the thing that had me a little bit disturbed is the sentence in here that says that the weapons provide no sighting illumination as designed. So I'm concerned if you have, that we're on a daily basis of, hopefully that's to encourage us to move forward and not quite 100% accurate statement.
That's our night sights. Bob can talk to that.
Night sights are luminescent barrels with a mild form of radiant material inside. Shelf life is on the average 7 to 10 years time. Typically, way back when I started in 1987, we used revolvers. There was no such thing with the inception of technology. They came about with these night sights. So I could come into this darkened room, acquire my target, and that was just an assistance point to help me accurately do what I had to do. It's just another feature, yet it's another $100 feature for the cost of the gun. So that's all included in on the gun. So the night sights have since diminished, whereas the officer now has to manipulate a flashlight along with the current sights, which just act like 3 dots, if you will, on a chalkboard, which is fine. It's just an added feature of the gun that was on it. It's just slowly showing the diminishment of the guns as time goes on.
So diminished and not necessarily increased risk to the officers.
No.
No. In the last page that talks about the return of the weapons traded in, it's just a little difficult to say we have to trade them on. We have to trade them in. However, the statement on the trade-in says all traded merchandise must be in good working order and delivered with all accessories. Obviously, we don't need to replace them if they're all in good working order.
I think that's kind of a subjective statement. We're not going to turn in a weapon that is not functioning. They know the conditions of the weapon when they made the deal with the town. It's not like we're doing.
Many pieces.
They're weapons that function.
All right. So then I guess to just go back to the HVAC question, since I was not in the last budget cycle, at what point in time did you know that you weren't going to need the $9,000 for your HVAC contract?
I would say probably within the last 90 days, and the first 30 of that 90 we explored obtaining funds a different way. It took us about 30-some days to get to the Board of Police Commissioners, at which time we all reached kind of a consensus that taking this donation was not the appropriate thing to do.
I'm not going there. I'm not going there, and I completely agree with you on that factor. I mean, my concern is that you know how everybody struggles. You guys struggle. This board struggles. The Board of Selectmen struggle over budgets and being able to reduce and making sure there's nothing extra in there. And here we are at the end of the year with an extra $9,000, mid through the year with an extra $9,000 to be able to expend on something that it was not budgeted for.
You know, one of the things we do more than we've ever done now is that we spend a lot of time talking between all of us, including board members, and in particular both Rudy and Kate. And you know, when this money became available out of the clear blue sky, in light of where we were and what we were concerned about, we didn't have any option.
If I might add to that, sorry, Bernie. The appropriation for the HVAC replacement was out of budgetary cycle. There was no provision for it in last year's capital program. It became a necessity when we couldn't begin last winter with the HVAC condition at the police stations, Cheryl. So they didn't have an opportunity not to budget for it because they didn't know they were going to replace it.
Okay. Well, that's where my question is.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? No. Thank you. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you. You all have a happy holiday.
Thank you, sir. Item number 12, request from the Board of Selectmen on behalf of Ron Pisano, Director of Public Works, for the following appropriations: $240,747 from designated capital and non-recurring expenditures, line item 20530-57495 road reclamation. $144,729 from capital and non-recurring, line item 20570-57999, undesignated projects for road surface, for a total of $385,476 for the rehabilitation of Lathrop, Upper Bartlett, and Gurley roads. This project is consistent with the capital improvement plan. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Motion and a second. Cheryl, second. Ron, would you like to talk about this at all?
Well, what it is, it's the reclamation of the three roads as indicated here, Lathrop, Upper Bartlett, and Gurley. What it shows is basically the cost of the contract. What we're doing on this one, other than what we've done in the past, is we used to use DAS contracts, which was Department of Administrative Services. They'd be statewide contracts that the state bid, and basically we would piggyback on those. We at the time last year we had survey was available, inspection wasn't available. That was through the Utility Commission. Since then we've had retirements in survey, so that's not available. Inspection is there's only one inspector, and that's the Assistant Construction Inspector. The Utility Commission is going to be using them more like full-time on their own projects than our own. He's going to be assigned to the Harrison's Landing project, which is over a year, which is it's going to be over a year's time as far as the duration of the project. So what this includes is it does include the survey. What we're going to have to do is actually come out with a set of plans and specifications, which means we need engineering services. So what this is it's the cost of the road reclamation at $25 a square yard. I have some quotes from the engineers on that, which were recently bid last year, and they were coming in with that number for the construction. And I have a quote in here for the engineer, our on-call engineer, SCA Kleinfelder, for the $47,576.
Thank you, Ron. Questions? Alan?
Hey, Ron, when do you expect that this work will be done?
Well, the timing is going to be such that I'll hit the RTM meeting for the funds. After that, we'll have to sign an agreement with the engineers, and I'd expect, this is going to be a spring project for us.
Okay, so
Spring
next RTM meeting is February, so
yeah.
The timing is, I was just wondering why we're approving it so early on, if we're not going to do it until what?
Well,
March, April?
it's got to be designed.
Okay.
So you've got to have survey out there, and you've got to have survey. I don't know if there's going to be any permits required for this. We do have a little bit of work on Old Mill Road. It might require a permit. I don't know. So that's going to be the lead-in per se to this project. Then once it gets designed, we have to advertise it. Usually it takes between advertising and actual construction 3 months. So we're going to get it done before June.
Okay, that's fine.
Charlotte, your question?
Yeah. Ron, we just recently did Lathrop Road and Route 32, so where is this going to pick up on Lathrop Road?
Well,
At the end of Upper Bartlett?
Yes. What happens is we did the intersection improvements on Lathrop, and that was from Route 32 to Upper Bartlett, and this is going to be from Upper Bartlett to the town line, and also Upper Bartlett from the intersection all the way to the cul-de-sac.
Right, okay, yeah, I drove it the other day. Okay.
Yeah.
And so then my other question will go to, you answered my questions about the reduction and the staffing for inspection and the survey work. However, the top part that you gave us from your company that's going to do the survey work for you and the design work.
Right.
I don't see any backup for that. It's lump sum, it's round numbers. The bottom says hourly rate, round numbers. So you know where my mind goes. My mind goes rounding up, adding a contingency.
Well, that's essentially going to be the contract to do the actual work. Those were hours that were put together by the engineers for that particular project.
But they don't tell you how much time. I mean, have you reviewed how many hours they're projecting that's going to be? They're saying this is a lump sum.
I do.
Here's our anticipated hourly rates.
Right.
How many hours are we thinking this actually is?
Well, when you think about it, the hourly rates for bidding, it's going to be based on, putting the package out, receiving the bids, reviewing the bids, making a recommendation, an hourly rate. Inspection is really hard to put it's an hourly rate, so it's very hard to put out, say exactly right now how many hours it's going to take, because the project could be how many days long, and you need full-time inspection for that.
But to me, it could be less, and we're saying, okay, we're here appropriating that it could be $47,600, so therefore we're going to work up our project and our estimated number of hours to be what Ron got us approved for.
No, actually, I don't have that agreement here, but I have it back at the office. It's an actual proposal to do that work, and I've reviewed it, and it's consistent with other projects. It's a rate schedule. We've been using Kleinfelder SCA's. They've done at least 12 projects for us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we bid them as an on-call, and all of their work is based on hourly rate. So,
Yeah.
perhaps you should email a copy of that proposal to the board.
Next time it'd be good to have it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Norm?
Ron, it was about 2 years ago when we had that massive rainstorm. He came in, he needed money for the road reconstruction, for the fixing the roadways in town. I made comment at that time that I had not been pleased with the resurfacing projects up to that date. And I reluctantly voted for it because in my mind I could see what was coming. And I am not happy with the repaving that was done in the areas where that sewer work was done. Clark Lane is not acceptable work to me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the taxpayers should be paying top dollar and drive down a road which has been repaved, reconstructed, and it's just a series of bumps and twists. I understand the area up in Quaker Hill, Lathrop Road, whatever. I know these things have to be done. Gurley Road, I'm not so sure about. How many residential homes are there in that section of the road? Now I'm assuming it runs from 95 exit ramp down to Oil Mill. Is that correct, that area?
It's from Oil Mill, and if you go east, you can see it's very, very clear because the roadway in that area, there's some areas of road that are only like 12 feet wide. Okay, there's a little culvert in there. It's pretty hazardous.
So it's a road improvement, not just a repaving project.
It'll be a little bit of a widening. Yeah, in other words.
A little bit?
Yes.
2 feet? 3
No.
feet? 4
Well,
feet?
the thing is we have a culvert in there, and it's just about enough to pass. You can't even hardly pass two vehicles on it. So what we're going to try to do is do a little bit of a widening on that.
All right, a little bit.
Well, we're going to try to get it probably 20 feet.
20 feet from 12, so 4 feet on each side.
Could be.
Could be?
It could be. It's not designed yet. And there's a culvert right in that restricted area. So in other words, it's hard for me to sit here before and without a plan survey to tell you exactly where we are and where we're going to go. We're going to go. You need right-of-way maps. You have to know where property lines are. That's all part of the design.
Okay, and the number of residential units up in that area?
I'd say there's probably, I'm going to say there's less than 12. But let me just say that when you think about it, that's the only piece of roadway that's not improved. And you'll see in the CIP, what I'm concentrating on are roadways that haven't been sewered, so to speak. In other words, there's a ton of roads in town where we've had the Cooperative Road Reconstruction Project. And there's a lot of residents out there who's actually had a benefit for getting curbings and new roads. I think yours was one of them, where we put sewers in, and in town. And there's still roadways out here where people haven't had the opportunity to have a new road. Dimmock Road is one. They've waited. Here's another one right here. It's in need of repair, and it has to be done. And I think as far as the residents go in town, I think they're all equal. They should all have an improved road, and this is one of them.
So how about the quality of the product when it's finished?
Excellent.
Excellent?
Mm-hmm.
Clark Lane is excellent?
Clark Lane is not a reconstruction. It was a settlement for the sewers. When we had the 9 inches of rain in March, water table came up and it took the fines down and settled the trenches. So essentially that whole project was all the trenches were over the sewers. Now, what happened is we patched the roads. We cut the roads, saw cut the roads, took out 2 feet of gravel, compacted it, put the gravel back in, and paved it. And that particular road, it wasn't done properly, so we had the contractor come back and do it again. So there's 2 patches. Aesthetically, it may not look the best because it's a patch. Actually, there's 2 of them in there. Structurally, it's fine. That's all I can tell you about that. When you have these settlements in trenches in town that settle, the only way to fix them is to cut the trench. It's a patch.
I understand that.
And the
what I'm
writability
talking
is
about
fine.
is the finished product that we're paying for. I
You know
don't
that-
think that is excellent by any means.
Well, Well, let me just say that, that part of Clark Lane was funded under the FHWA program. Okay, so the Department of Transportation engineers came out there and they approved it. And that's funded by, I think it was 75% on that from FEMA. So the engineers from DOT came out and approved it.
They do. I told you before, I didn't expect to see anything like that. I've been through town, and I've seen lateral trenches that have put in for water, sewer, etc., road work at various places. And it's always, you can not only see it, you drive over it, and there's always the bump. They can do it level. They should be brought back, and they should be made to fix it right so that these things don't exist. And that's the point that I made before.
Further comments? Cheryl.
Just one quick follow-up based on something, an answer you gave, Norm. I did do Gurley Road, so I can see what you're talking about, where it starts and where it goes. I drove that on Sunday. I guess the only question that I would have, though, is I can see a level of wanting to improve that. Do you have any concern about if you improve it to the point of 20 feet and having two cars be able to pass easily, that you're going to increase traffic at that end that maybe is not desirable?
Let me just say that from that point, from Oil Mill Road to where we're ending, that project area, we're going to see if we can squeeze 20 feet out of that. If you looked at it, you see some embankments, there's some restrictions, the houses are close, some of the houses are very close to the roadway. From that point east, it's all 24 feet. All rebuilt to 24, and then you can hit the area where we had the interchange down with Crossroad and I-95 with the bridges, that's even wider.
Well, but I'm thinking that's where you want the traffic to concentrate, keep it on Route 1, keep it on there, and not increase that cut through that if you improve that well there, you're going to have.
Well, I don't know if it's going to be a cut through. It's essentially, it's like when we did, say, Bremen Road. We did Bremen Road. It was 24 feet when we started, and we wanted to be consistent, so we carried 24 feet through. The same thing we did with Spithead Road. Spithead Road was 24 feet in the improved section where we had sewers, and we just carried that all the way through 24. It makes sense to have consistency in the roadway width. It's not going to generate any more traffic because there's really no other way to get onto the road. You're going to access this portion of Gurley Road from Oil Mill. You hardly ever see anybody coming off the off-ramp, the northbound off-ramp on 95 and taking a right. There's just nobody doing that. It's... Not yet.
And the only reference I make to that is the fact that when the hospital does put their facility up there, that is their entrance. And
So
Gurley Road will be
taking
a concern at that point in time as well. So this is somewhat preparing for traffic issues.
If there's other questions, I have a question here. There's references on times. I think we had another project where you talk about the fact that there's labor cutbacks in Public Works and Utility Commission and what else? And anyway, the bottom line is this: is that it's sort of an explanation on the fact that we have a $47,576 survey design. What does it normally cost us for this prior to these staffing cutbacks?
Well, the survey was basically the survey that we would just pay hourly for the Utility Commission. We don't have that anymore. The inspection is we would use the assistant construction inspector when we were able to use him and have him, whatever the cost of his hourly wage was and benefits. Now what we've got to do is, because we were doing this sort of like in-house, we have to go back out. And when you advertise a project, you've got to show the contractor what he's bidding on. To do that, you need a set of plans. To do that, you need a set of specifications and bidding documents. So we're going to, from the DAS contracts, which we handle in-house, to doing it this way. bidding. And also the fact that with the staff cuts in Public Works, our last project was Bloomingdale Road, was a road reclamation. We went to the state DAS contracts. We got a reclaimer, a contractor to reclaim, and he reclaimed it, ground it all up. We had a contractor to pave it, and he paved it. But then we had to do the curbs, the driveways, the loaming and seeding, the mailboxes, and to this date, we're still not finished. So in other words, the cutbacks have caused us to go out for the work. What we used to do in-house on the labor end, we've got to have it done by a contractor.
So I guess the question I'm asking, and I don't know what the answer to this is, obviously, has anybody sat down and did a plus minus delta on this and tried to figure out, is there a way that we, obviously with the cutbacks that we've made, we thought we balance our budget. So is there a, as we look at this now, should we be trying to figure out, is there a way that we, how many of these projects do we do a year?
One.
This is one project, this is it.
Yeah.
So this 47,000 is here, it's gone. There's not another project we're look at the rest of the year.
No, with reclaiming and paving, you'll see that in the CIP. I put one out a year. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you'll see that. But I also try to do at least, and I haven't been approved for it, but at least a mile a year of sidewalk. That'd be another one. Now that one we might try to do in-house, but again, the construction is going to have to go to the outside because we just don't have the personnel to actually build this mile of sidewalk. Then you have the bigger projects. You'd have the Harrison's Landing that's coming up. That's in conjunction with the sewer project. That one is bid and designed. But normally this is going to be one project per year.
But Harrison's Landing, we would have had to come out to bid anyway. We would have had to get somebody to come in and design that for us anyway. So it's one project a year that is above and beyond what we normally would have had to do.
Right.
I guess that's my question.
Pretty much, yeah.
Thank you. If there's no further questions, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
Opposed, none. Any abstentions? Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you very much, and have a nice holiday.
Thank you, sir. Same to you. Item number 13, review and approval of the Board of Finance budget for FY 2012-2013. Can I get a motion to approve a budget of $65,494?
So moved.
And a second? Thank you, Sharon. Rudy, would you like to talk about your budget? Our budget? Like the way I shifted that?
Well, basically, as you can know, the largest part of this budget is in professional services. $48,500 of that, which is a state mandate, that's for your audit. So when you deduct that from the $65,494, it doesn't leave a whole lot else. There's very little discretionary funds within this budget. And the audit was bid. Next year is the fourth year of a potential 5-year. We've had 3 years of the same auditor. You have, when we bid it the last time, it was for 3 years secure with a 2-year extender at the option of the Board of Finance. The figure you see here, 48.5, is a reasonable figure. I submit if we decide not to go with the same auditors and we go out on the street with another request for proposal, that in fact it would come in higher than that because we are a town that does not do just an audit, but a comprehensive annual financial report. So I think the pricing is good, and it certainly isn't inflated.
Questions? Go ahead, Alan.
Just a comment. Nobody likes to have their budget increase, especially in this time. But just to go on record, the 5% increase in this budget was the increase in the audit and a reevaluation of our under-budgeted advertising line item.
Right. Again, a statutory requirement. You have to pay for the cost of advertising the budget to the RTM. Your recommendations to the RTM.
And we were a little low on the budget, 10, 11, 11, 12. So.
Rudy, I have a question, because we talked about this several times. We keep on using the term statutorily. When we do our audits, and as you said, do we do anything above and beyond what's absolutely mandatory when we do this audit?
Oh, yeah.
We do.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. So my question is,
why?
Yes.
Because you have $155 million of authorized debt out there, and in order to maintain a AA bond rating, you better present a CAFR every year.
We're saving in interest way more than we would on the
Absolutely.
increased expense of
Absolutely.
higher,
This is money
lower
well
value
spent.
okay.
And there's a degree of transparency with a comprehensive annual financial report that you don't get with your audit. And I think with the very aggressive school capital program that we have, with the fact that we're now the burden shift because of the deregulation of Dominion, and we're finally off of the subsidy from the SBC, I think we have a greater responsibility to give the taxpayers the best information we can give them regarding how we spend their money. And I'm not running for election.
Duly chastised. If there are no further comments, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. Item number 14, review and approve of the contingency budget in the amount of $250,000. Can I have a motion, please?
Move.
Second.
Motion is second. Any comments or questions on the contingency budget? Sure, you like to come contingency. Would you like to talk about that?
No. I have one question. Do we expect some contracts to come in that we're going to have to use contingency on in this the 2013 fiscal year?
Yes.
I already knew the answer to, but I want to make it clarify.
1303 is what you're talking about?
1303, yes, that is not budgeted in the FY13 budget because we don't have a contract yet. There's a potential to have half-year GTA implementation because their contract expires December 31st of 2012. And I don't know where the Board of Ed is sitting at, but they have 4 contracts currently in the negotiation. So I think the $250,000 level is warranted.
Aren't any further questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? New business. Any new business? Lansing reports. Bill? Anything?
Yeah. Board of Selectmen on November 17th waived the bid process and accepted the proposal from B&W Paving and Landscaping for the repair of Jordan Cove Road. It will come up later in the RTM. At a cost of $114,638. They also approved the establishment of a $20 per appointment fee for brush curbside collection that will be effective on the 1st of July, 2012. And they approved the disposal of a Ford F-150 truck with 70,000 miles from the Board of Education. Word was that the transmission repair was cost not effective due to the age of the truck, 2002. They approved a within-series transfer of $28,500 from emergency management dispatch to dispatch overtime. The dispatcher retired and the replacement had not yet been hired. I assume the replacement's been hired now since the interviews were on November 16th. There was a special presentation of 5 comfort quilts that were made from quilt spares designed by children during the Family Day at Harkness in honor of the 10th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks. And they provided the first selectman with his annual authority to sign contracts on behalf of the town. On December 6th, the Board of Selectmen endorsed the Regional Performance Incentive Program proposals from the Southeast Connecticut Council of Governments. These items include the preparation of a comprehensive plan and model for shared services, equipment, and staff for COG members, creation of a digital index of town clerk maps for all COG municipalities, and having COG municipalities join the Capital Region COG in an online permitting system. They also waived the bidding process for repairs to the library roof that will be performed by Eagle Rivet Roof Service for $5,200 from the building maintenance budget cost. Service contracts for repairs line so that the library can remove the buckets that they have in the general area when it rains. They approved a modification to the fee schedule to delete the recycling containers, that's the little blue buckets, since the recycling and refuse containers are now the same gallon size. Our friends at the Utility Commission held a public hearing on their wastewater facilities plan update by Wright Pierce. Recommendations of the consultant in the plan, included in the plan, were upgrade design capacity of the Richard Groves pump station at an estimated cost of $980,000, installing a 4th pump at the Evergreen pump station at an estimated cost of $210,000, monitoring the increase in East Line flows through the system, since East Line seems to indicate that they're going to have some significantly increased flows in the near future. Continue the infiltration and inflow, better known as I&I, evaluations and rehabilitation. Enforce the priority management system when a parcel or a group of parcels request sewer service. Increase the Utility Commission operations and maintenance staff to 8 personnel from current 7. Evaluate the integrity of the Maryland and Williamsport injector pump stations, and work with state OPM to revise the state mapping to reflect the actual sewer service area. They'll be doing this through the Planning and Zoning Commission, which has the proprietary liaison with OPM. And continue the CIP for the aging infrastructure. As of October 31st, 2011, the wastewater enterprise fund revenues were $965,700, and expenditures were $1,699,940. Expenses from recovering from Tropical Storm Irene were the major contributor to the high expenditures. 23 grinder pumps were replaced during the tropical storm. Harrison's Landing sewer bids were to be opened on November 18th. I have no idea how that bid opening worked out. Design for Peninsula Drive Bridge water main has been completed, and the bids will be advertised in late January. For those of you that don't know, that's Peninsula Drive is the bridge between Waterford and New London down by Ocean Beach Park and Ridgewood Park. It's the bridge across, and it's got a water pipe that's going across it that hasn't been in service for a number of years. A meeting is planned between Chief Engineer Soto and his counterpart in New London to discuss the poor maintenance of water booster stations and water tanks by the New London's contractor. The Logger Hill sewer pump design request for funds has been, according to the Utility Commission, has been forwarded to the first selectman.
Finally, yes.
Finally? Okay. East Lyme will have a small financial responsibility in any work done on Logger Hill piping because of their share in that piping. And I think most of you have seen the pictures, the TV show of that. And Chip, if you give me your email address, I'll email you the link so you can look at them online. They're up on YouTube.
Really?
That's one way to put it, yeah. The RTM approved the teacher's contract on Monday, November 14th. The superintendent's presentation sold the contract to the RTM. There were a number of members that, when they walked into the room, were going to vote against it. That Superintendent Bellaire's riveting presentation changed their mind. On December 5th, they nominated Tommy Dembeck, out there in the audience, as the moderator of the RTM. They appointed Rodney Pinkham to an unexpired term on the Utility Commission. Lisa Berry, Cheryl Warder, and Steve Nagy were appointed to the Personnel Review Board. Congratulations, Cheryl. David Lurtz's appointment to the Seat Board was ratified. Tom Amorati and Bill Harwood were appointed to the Social Service Grants Committee, and Gus Sedilli was appointed to the Retirement Commission. The RTM budget for FY 2013 was proposed at $18,679. They modified the motion on the Jordan Cove request to state that the appropriation would result in a reclassification of expenses in the Public Works Engineering and Materials lines to the recently appropriated CNR lines. That kind of covers you cannot transfer money from capital non-recurring to general fund, but you can move expenses into capital non-recurring from general fund. And that concludes my liaison report. I'll give you a hard copy and send you an email copy tomorrow.
Thank you. Any other liaison reports? Alan?
Yeah, briefly, Board of Ed, obviously there'll be a new board taking effect tomorrow. Relatively quiet for the most part. They've moved forward, at least logistically, on the idea of a finance committee to oversee their budget on an ongoing basis. I think that will probably pass with this new board. I think there's a lot of sentiment for it. Tomorrow they're also reviewing second readings of 3 policies, one on social networking, which should be interesting, one on bullying, one on field trips, and at the last meeting, which kind of links into school building, Quaker Hill was awarded the plaque for Silver Lead for energy efficiency. Nice plaque. As far as the school building committee goes, yes, we have another reoccurrence of some site work issues, which we have had several meetings on over the last week or so, bringing in all relevant principals to go over inspections, responsibilities, management, and what we essentially determined is that there are a lot of, I shouldn't use this phrase, it's probably politically incorrect, not enough people in charge. Yeah, that's exactly where I was going to go, but so we have reorganized the flow chart so that there is one lead person from O&G overseeing both site engineers and the site contractors. So we've had full discussions, very frank, very adamant. There's been a very frank talk in these last couple of meetings, so I believe we have things well in hand. There is a meeting of the Conservation Commission tomorrow night where all of their concerns should be addressed through O&G and the Board of Ed. So moving forward. This year has been unusual. As most of you probably know, we have had some 65 inches of rain this year. And that's been one of the biggest problems we've had over there. The site is large, the site is mostly open, and the erosion and sedimentation issues have been numerous. So we have it under control. It is getting much better, and we're moving on. As you can see across the street, the roof is progressing, which has been another issue as far as the rainwater. So we are addressing the new areas that are being affected by the implementation and construction of the roof. Masonry is going up very well. We're well into the 3rd floor right now. And building should be buttoned up by the end of this month, we're hoping. And then temporary heat will happen in January. The pool is virtually complete and will be open to the public on January 3rd. Inspection was today and should allow the swim team to start using it tomorrow. It will not be open for public use until January, but with non-public use, we're allowing the swim team to start using the pool. That's about it. There's a couple of issues. Tom, you'll get the information tomorrow. There's some review on a lot of things. I still have issues with the way that drafting, quote unquote, is being done these days, and the tremendous amount of design change orders that are being done. It still appears that somewhere in the neighborhood of 75% of the change orders are due to design problems, things that aren't being addressed, things that have been forgotten, things that just haven't been done to code. Very frustrating. But the next big thing that we're looking at is because of the pitch of the roof, that we're looking at adding additional snow guards. There's a kind of CYA coming from the roofing company that is implying that we may not have enough snow guards. They're recommending more snow guards. That's then up to us, but it probably gives them an out to say, hey, you didn't put on the extra snow guards. We told you so. So we'll be looking at that. Those are the kind of interesting things that happen. But the building is progressing. We're still on schedule for where we need to be. And we're still looking at a target date of February 13 for the opening of the building.
Question?
Yes, sir, Bill.
Yeah. Is the problem that the additional snow guards required because of the pitch of the roof isn't great enough?
No, the pitch of the roof is too great. It's not too great. Let me rephrase that. The pitch of the roof is significant, and the roofing company is recommending additional snow guards above and beyond the original design.
Is that because they're afraid the snow's going to fall down on top of somebody?
Yes. Yeah, because the pitch, and I'm not off the top of my head sure of the actual.
Yeah. How many degrees?
Right. It's approximately 40 to 42 degrees pitch. That's according to my building manager. And in the event of a melt, a large amount of ice could slide down the roof and would hit a sidewalk. And what we are looking at is the preference, at least in early discussions, that we don't caution tape off the building as other buildings of that nature have been in other areas of the state for the entire winter. I think it'd look pretty, less than
inappropriate,
desirable. To have a series of caution tapes going around our roof, beautiful no building, because the roof wasn't adequately.
Now, what does the snow guard do? Of course, I'm looking at granted in the residential area. We look at when you get too much snow up there and you get melted, you get ice dams.
No,
of course, it's different construction. But
this is specifically designed to slow the speed of the fall and break up the large volumes so that it falls in much smaller sheets, so that you don't have a 40-foot section of snow and or ice sliding off the roof and skipping over the one snow guard on a roof of some size. Yes.
So if there's no pitch, then it builds up on the roof and it gets too heavy and it collapses. It's too much pitch and it falls on top of something.
Yeah, or you have cooling issues, which is even worse.
That's right. Now, there is a state statute, state mandate that you may not have a flat roof, but the minimum requirement on a flat roof for a school building is only, I think, 1 foot. So even that, we've had some problems at the Oswegatchie roof that are being addressed by the manufacturer with cooling even on a relatively shallow roof. We certainly don't want problems with the significant pitch of this roof. So that will be addressed next week.
Cheryl.
Question.
Yes.
Well, actually, comment. I know you have been committed to the school projects for quite some time.
Me personally?
Yes, you personally. And I know how much time and effort you have expended, and you and I have pretty much been on the same page from way back when. And if there's nothing that reminds you of that, it has to be doing our door-to-door campaigning that we recently did that has that big red target on our back for being blamed for, quote, school debt, which I don't have any problem with. I think we've done the right thing, and I think the schools are great, and we've been doing a good job. However, I have to say, the high school gives me major agita.
And you're not on the building committee.
Well, no, I know, and I think it's been a very good thing that I've taken 2 years of sitting back in that. But and I get even more concerned when I see, I read last month's minutes where you said that design changes are 60%. Now you're at 75%, and I'm sure you have been, but I think that for the town, for cost, whatever, we have to really be making sure we're keeping those. If those design changes are costing us more, those that made those recommendations to us have to be continually held accountable for those increased costs to us.
What I will tell you, and what Rudy will tell you, because I've been on the building committee now for, I think it's 10 years.
Ever.
Yeah, sometimes, some days it feels like that. And I came in about halfway through Clark Point, so
Right.
I've seen just about, no, I shouldn't say I've seen everything you can see, because that would be, that's what we'll see next week. Every time there is a change order, it is determined whose request it is, whether it's an owner request or whether it's a design request by whoever. So as we go through the change orders, and I will give you another example, because we just went through the preliminary change order meeting yesterday. Matter of fact, it was a 3-hour consecutive series of meetings yesterday. For instance, once again, in the bathrooms, in order to maintain consistent hot water without having to wait, just as you would in a hotel on the 23rd floor, you don't want to wait for the hot water to get from the basement to the 23rd floor. There are continuous recirculating pumps moving the hot water through the system. Once again, we have come to a bathroom where the sinks are there, this time the piping's there, but the recirculating pumps were not. So now we have a change order to put the circulating pumps into the construction. And my favorite phrase of the last 10 years plus is, you would have had to pay for that anyway. The question is, how much more do we have to pay because we're putting it in now as opposed to at the original point? And do we have to open a wall that's already been closed in order to put the recirculating? That's not normal. We usually test that before the walls go up. So how much more is it costing us because we have to do it at this point? And that's noted in the minutes, and Rudy keeps a tremendous file. And at the end of the project, she puts on her bulldog costume and goes after every extra, we 20%-ish
In that area.
to go after whoever was responsible. Let me give you another example, because this one was fun yesterday too. There's a hallway adjacent to the field house that was existing, was renovated. There are new doors at both ends, but the hallway is not quite wide enough for the new exit signs, which now have to, whenever you do a refit, there has to be an exit sign not only above the door, but at the floor. So in the event that there is a smoke event, and you have to crawl, you can't see the top exit above the door because there's smoke there, you now need an exit sign at floor level in a cage that's illuminated. Except that the hallway doesn't have the width on either side of the door in order to put in a caged exit sign. So now we're looking at, well, the fire marshal needs an exit sign somewhere near the bottom of the door. How do you do that? It wasn't addressed in the original design, even though the architect knew that this hallway was not significant. So now we have to do something to accommodate the building and the fire marshal in order to get an exit sign of this correct size at the exit. Apparently, the fire marshal will not allow a sign on the door in reflective material, and I've been told that there are also other towns or other areas where you can put in essentially what is a spotlight to light the bottom of the door so that everybody can see it. Fire marshal also didn't like it because if the doors were open, you wouldn't be able to see the exit sign. To which I said, if the doors were open, isn't the exit pretty obvious? That didn't go over too well. They said you're using common sense again. So these are the kinds of things, and this is a design flaw because the architect did not address the need for a coded sign at the exit. And whatever that's going to cost us will be attributed to the architect.
Can you put vertical signs in instead of horizontal?
The same thing.
There's a code. I know, Peter is the one who mandates what kind of exit sign. Well, the state mandates it, and he enforces it. So somehow we will get an exit sign in that particular hallway. But these are the kinds of things that are attributable to mostly the architect.
Okay, so the second part of this that I also would attribute to the architect, and I'm sure that you're paying attention to is, we benefited from the economy in terms of construction costs, and we've been lucky that construction costs have been less than we had anticipated for all of these projects. But it's very distressing to be about town and having people coming up to you and saying, valid or not, it's a perception of, well, they saved money, so they're going to do this now. They saved money, they're going to do this now. And the town has had this experience with this architect before, that I would just want to make sure that we're not, it's not this money has been expended, so it's yours to spend. I know that we're fortunate that you don't think that way, but this architect has thought that way in the past and spent everything that was appropriated for a project, including that line that's called contingency, which I was looking at the backup you have here, Rudy, and I was looking at the amount expended and was saying, where's my contingency line that should be totally unexpended? However, I guess on the front page you have the unallocated, so I was happy to see that with this architect particularly, we have to make absolutely certain that contingency does not equal money to spend.
Let me unequivocally say that this committee will not spend money arbitrarily, simply because we haven't, or increase the scope of the project because there is additional monies saved by lower bidded contracts. I will not allow it. I know my colleague in the back of the room is vehement about that, as is the rest of the committee. It is never our intention, it will not be our intention. I would say that unequivocally and on the record, no. That being said, yes, I agree with you on the architect. Mr. Belair is, I think, doing a fine job as the lead from the Board of Ed on this. He has done a very good job being aggressive when necessary that I've seen. And he's got the facts at his fingertips. When we met with the architect yesterday morning, he had his full file in front of him and had every document necessary to address the concerns that we had with him yesterday. So I will continue to report, and I will continue to assure you that we are watching every single dollar as it goes out.
Thanks.
Further questions for Alan? Any further license reports? Yes, Dan.
Just one comment, Ron. Bill, you mentioned that we hope to have a dispatcher. I know Barbara's efforts are to have that dispatcher available on the 1st of January. So the offer is being made, and as soon as we get acceptance in 2 weeks, we should have that person. Timing is, as you know, everything, but we're hoping to get there. So, thank you.
And then Chip and Mark, if you just, I know I have your stuff, but make sure that a vet has your contact information, just in case there's changes to meetings or anything like that, cell phones, email addresses, and things like that, so you can get that. And we've already got Cheryl's number. We've had her number a couple of years now. If there's no further comments, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Thank you.